Hi there guys, so I asked for input about what to make a video about, and somebody wrote about AI and the rise of AI and how it's going to affect us as human beings spiritually, and what are the positive and negative qualities about it. And I think it's such a massive topic that I could spend hours talking about this, but here are a few ideas that have come, and I've got a few cards that might be interesting as well, because I did ask the tarot what also we need to, I could look at to inspire a little bit of a video here. But anyway, if we take a step back from AI and just look at what it is and recognize that it's this learned, programmed algorithm full of a huge amount of information that have come from human beings, human knowledge and human experience and human wisdom. And it amalgamates, or it connects all of the wisdom gathered from many different sources and puts it all together in some sort of concise format for us. And we can have conversations with that wisdom. We can, in a way, it's a little bit like we're having conversations with our ancestors. We're having conversations with people we've never met and never will meet, as in a conversational format, which is incredibly logical, incredibly precise on many levels, and in that way it's quite mind-blowing. Or at least when I ask very specific questions to AI and get the answers, I'm quite surprised a lot of the time. And I'm surprised at the depth. I'm surprised at the wholeness of the answers that I get. Those answers are incredibly well phrased, incredibly well defined, and even structured in a way that I wouldn't imagine structuring an answer, and I feel that in itself, and our interaction with that. And okay, so I'm not from a generation that has interacted with AI from a very early age, but my kids are, and obviously the next generation is going to grow up with it hand by hand. We're going to grow up with AI being a very strong fundamental source of knowledge and wisdom. AI will definitely take over a lot of jobs that we have as human beings very quickly. There's going to be a bit of a displacement on that front, and we'll see a lot of things that we do as human beings being done by AI, because very practically speaking, it can do them better. Education is going to be one of them, I imagine. There will be, I think the education that can come through AI will be more complete and probably a little bit more profound than that which we can teach on an intellectual basis, on a very rational, logical, and facts-based teaching format. Because AI will do that maybe a little bit better to a certain degree. There will also be, I think the amount of job displacement that AI will bring into us as humanity will be a little bit unbalancing, destabilizing for us humans. I understand this to be one of the biggest more negatives, or apparent negatives, in its primary effect, because it's going to come in and do some of the jobs that we do better. One of the consequences will be primarily we'll have a lot of job displacement, and so there will be people without work, or people finding themselves without an identity which they may have built certain safeguards around, as far as our own personal ego is concerned. There's going to be a lot of tower moments coming into people's lives as what we seem to have built up, it gets dismantled, and it might get dismantled quite quickly. And in the short term, this might seem like it's quite a negative influence, but in the long term, as we've all experienced, every terror moment or every destruction or every death that we experience gives rise to the opportunity of the birth of something new. Now, there's one thing that AI will bring is a little challenge to us as human beings. We're going to be challenged to reinvent ourselves a lot. We're going to be challenged to ask ourselves certain questions that we might not normally or might not in previous times or eras of our civilization be stimulated to ask. We're going to ask ourselves those fundamental questions like, so who am I? So what am I doing here? What's the most important thing? All of these very deep questions that come from the emptiness of maybe not having work or not feeling safe and not having a financial freedom that we might previously have had. And this is going to, this is going to be challenging for a lot of people. But these types of challenges, in the bigger picture, in the long run, in the greater, higher perspective, is a very positive thing for our growth and a very positive thing for our human expansion. And if you imagine a whole generation growing up with this guru-like crazy amount of knowledge and wisdom available on a day-to-day basis, in other words, every question that we have can be answered quite coherently and logically without a huge amount of bias. And this is one of the beautiful things about AI. It's never going to have the ego bias that human people have, and that might be also what it lacks and what is missing in the AI story. But it's going to be a very neutral teacher and a very neutral source of information. Obviously, you can program bias into AI, and it will be biased to a certain degree, but fundamentally, very much lower in bias by nature than it would be if it was a human ego or coming from a human experience, which is much more limited, much less complete, much more rounded, and much more broad in its, much less broad in its perspectives. Less of all of those. And so what does AI bring to us? Well, it's going to first of all cause us a little bit of disruption as far as how we think we need to be working and acting in our day-to-day lives. We're going to have the challenge of growth being thrown into our faces, as in, hey, you can't do this anymore, you got to do something else. How do you want to grow? We're going to have the challenge of having to learn new skills continuously, not just when we're younger as kids, but when we're older and growing older and older, we're still going to have to learn newer and newer skills, because AI will not just change the world quite quickly in the next 5 to 10 years, but it's going to carry on changing the world exponentially. There's going to be a snowball effect of growth and expansion that we're going to see that accelerates more and more. To the degree that we as human beings are able to keep up, I imagine, and our potential to keep up will be experienced in human beings as nudges and pushes to expand in who we believe ourselves to be, what we believe we can do, and how we can get creative in this world and create more of something useful, interesting, something that makes us, or something that can promote something more beneficial or positive towards humanity. So there is this obvious negative influence that people will lose things, people will lose work, they'll lose stability, and the mental health of the collective world at the moment is quite delicate, to say the least, and not very balanced. And this probably will get a little bit worse but it has to get worse in order for it to get better. We have to shine a light and really have the delicate issues of our mental programming highlighted or spotlighted in order for us to realize, oh, there's a problem here, we have to change it. And that spotlight is not going to feel comfortable. It's going to look like things getting worse, or maybe mental health in human beings getting worse. And I don't actually think that the mental health in humanity will actually be getting worse. It will appear that it'll appear to be that way on the surface, because more and more people will be mentally suffering, obviously. But I believe the suffering is below the surface on a subconscious level, and we are much better at denying that suffering and avoiding admitting that suffering and admitting our maybe confused mental programming. And this will accelerate that confusion to come into the surface, and that those false beliefs that we hold to be seen and recognized as they manifest in actual maybe physical illnesses and personal mental problems. Now, this might appear to be, an issue, and there might be a little bit of fighting against what seems to be the cause of these problems, but we mustn't kill the messenger. The messenger is not the problem. The mirror is not the issue. Oh, but look at the mirror, and AI will be a mirror for us. And I was asked, how is AI going to be great for our spiritual path? It's going to be one of the best mirrors. It's going to accelerate our growth, or potentially help accelerate our growth, because it will be a more honest mirror, to ourselves. We deny so much in our lives. We deny so much of who we are and what we're here to do. And it won't be very long before AI connected to our body in some way through a watch or something like this, will be reading our bodily symptoms and signals in a way which it will give us a feedback that's an honest, logical, fact-based feedback, not something that's tainted by our denial filters. That's one thing. Let me show you a few cards here that came up. This is the card that came up when I asked about AI, and there's a gift here. There's a gift of self-love here. Now, AI is going to be a therapist for us in many ways, and it's going to be a very neutral therapist for us in many ways. Not many people are going to go to therapy and be able to afford sitting down with somebody, maybe like me, who's going to offer some type of personal advice for growth. AI is going to do that for free. And it's going to do that in a safe way where you're not going to feel judged by your computer screen. You're not going to feel like that there's an ego the other side that is going to challenge whether you feel safe enough to ask the question in the secret environment of your own home. You're going to feel safe to do that. And a lot of men don't feel safe to do that anyway, don't feel safe to confess even to their own minds. But once there's a light shone on it, and the other cards that came up, and the two cards that I'm going to show you, is the Sun reversed and this 10 of Swords. And the Sun reversed nearly always speaks about what we don't want to look at, what we don't want the light of the sun to shine upon, and what we're in denial about. And that denial is going to help break patterns of our mind, break patterns of our mental conditioning. We're going to experience deaths. We're going to experience death to the way we are programmed to think we need to work. We're going to experience the death of, but I'm a teacher, I'm a doctor, this is who I am, that's my identity. Some of those programs and ideas are going to have to die in order to carry on living in the presence of AI, which will take over some of our jobs. And yeah, one day AI will be a better doctor than the doctors that we have, because it will be measuring our symptoms in a way which is and connected to a whole database of understanding, knowledge and wisdom that one simple doctor looking at some charts may or may not remember according to their cognitive abilities. AI will trump that 10 times out of 10. There will be no empathy coming from AI. This is what it will lack, but it will communicate to us in empathic dialogue. And so, although there won't be the energy of empathy, we will read the words or even hear the words of AI, and we will imagine that empathy, and that will be a little bit tricky, be a little bit delicate, because we'll feel like we are going to have AI friends. That's going to be a thing. We've seen it on the movies already, for many years, of people falling in love with robots and things. And this is not too far from being a reality. There is going to be, we are going to have conversations and relationships with an AI person, if you like, or an AI entity. And that AI entity that's tapped into is going to be this not all-knowing, but very wise guru, if you like, that has a self-reflective ability, will see both sides of both sides. It's not going to be opinionated, and it's not going to try to force his opinion on you either, unless there's some agenda programmed into the AI model. But normally that's not the case, and the AI has the ability to look at both sides of the story very very neutrally, which we as human beings find quite challenging. And so with this as a primary teacher, with this as something that as with AI, as the next generations grow up, maybe not depending upon it, but using it all the time, every single day, when that starts to happen, you'll start to create a generation of people that will naturally have this more neutral way of thinking, and this ability to tap into wisdom and understanding, and see both sides of the story. AI will mirror us. So like anything, it's going to be what it feeds to us will depend upon what the questions that we ask. And if we ask only a specific type of question, we're only going to get specific type of answers. But AI has this wonderful ability to notice when our thinking is just one-sided and offer alternative perspectives and alternative viewpoints about the same thing, something that we might not ask for, but we will receive in relation to the prompts that we give to it. This in itself will allow us to move away from just one way of looking at life. This is going to be very beautiful and expansive, and help us as human beings to be a little bit more empathic and embracing to all different types of views and all different types of people's belief systems. Because you can ask any prompts to AI about any religious stories, any right or left-leaning political dynamics, and it will give you a fair description of both sides of both sides. And that's something that we will not get if we're just looking at specific media outlets or just looking at other human beings with very egotistically tainted bias. And so with AI being a source of news, a source of information, a source of teaching, and a source of guidance and wisdom, it's going to mean that we as human beings are going to grow up being a little bit more full, at least mentally. Because what I mean by full mentally is that intellectually we're going to be able to find answers for everything. And it's going to be really, really quick. And so one of the primary ways that AI will affect us is on a mental level. It will help us find answers to questions. Very simply this. And we are still going to be able to decide what we assimilate from those answers. And knowledge, when it's just intellectual in nature, is not experiential. We still have the responsibility to turn guidance into experiential knowledge. And we have the responsibility to turn what we hear and act then upon it, and that becomes a discipline, or that becomes a habit or a trait, which is another, maybe a different complicated story of how we turn guidance into action. But this is what AI won't be able to do for us. It won't be able to give that for us, but it will be able to nudge us in the right direction. It will be able to mirror back to us who we are, and it will do so in a very non-judgmental way, which is very safe. So while there might be some primary consequences of AI in the world, being that mental health may well seem to be exaggerated as a consequence of people losing their work and their jobs, and people having to question what they're supposed to be doing with their lives, and having, we may have been educated for 10 years in order to become a certain thing, and then AI comes and takes that job away from you. This might well happen. You may have worked for your whole life, and let's say 20 years doing one job, and then suddenly you're asked to change that. That is going to cause a rupture in the way we think our lives should be. And we will primarily or initially experience that as a bad thing. We'll judge it and we'll go, oh God, that's so terrible. And everybody would go, oh, poor you, so terrible. And the world will have an initial negative reaction. We always have an initial negative reaction when we lose something. Even though in the bigger picture, life is telling us, hey, losing something is also the opportunity to gain something else. And if we can flip that in our perspective and start looking at our loss as a potential gain, then we're halfway to finding what that gain actually is. And all gain is going to be expansive in nature. When we learn something new, or when we're asked to take on different roles in our life, it's going to be an expansive experience. It's going to be enriching. And so we just have to, as human beings, challenge ourselves more and embrace the challenges that come up in our life, because there's going to be more of them, many, many more of them. There's another couple of interesting stories about AI that I've just thought about or tapped into, and one of them is, if AI will help us create more and more technology, and we already have this. So if you imagine this collective conscious wisdom and knowledge of the internet, being able to have an interface or a communication, conversation with that knowledge, then also that's going to happen. That's going to happen much quicker and in many different ways. And one of those ways is people are going to be, reading it in their glasses, that's going to turn into some chip that they put in their head, or an earphone that they put in their ear, and they're going to be able to hear guidance. We're going to be able to probably measure some of our thoughts and transmit ideas to each other, which is exactly what the conversation is about anyway. We're going to be able to transmit ideas to and from the internet in a way where our interface will be less typing on a keyboard and more visual or more mental in nature. This is going to be a very material manifestation of telepathic communication, which will which I can't imagine not being an experiential thing within the next 10, 20 years, to be honest. There's another story here also, that when we are in communication with something that seems quite wise and quite knowledgeable and quite profound in depth, it will accustom us to having a communication with higher understanding. So this exchange that we have with AI, when you're interacting and giving it prompts and questions and things and asking for answers, is very similar to you sitting down, closing your eyes in meditation and asking your higher self for guidance. It's very similar. And our experience of that type of communication will also promote our inner communication with ourselves, and we're going to maybe copy that communication with this communication because it's an experience. We believe in it already. We believe we can get unlimited guidance whenever we want it, just in the palm of our hand. That belief is going to help us believe the fact that we can channel this inner guidance, and we'll start receiving more intuitive and channeled guidance from our higher selves, or from maybe a level of consciousness that doesn't relate to our more limited awareness. And this in turn will open up doors for communication to what might be higher spiritual beings, whether you want to imagine that as alien extraterrestrial interactions. It will open us up to that idea. The AI will be a source of wisdom which will blow our minds a little bit, and which seems to be much more knowledgeable than any one human being can be. And so that communication will also allow our minds to open up to a communication to a level of consciousness that we don't completely understand, like AI, that would love to communicate to us and help us and give us some guidance in some way. And now there are, all sorts of spiritualists that are channeling different entities of this, that, and the other, and a lot of those entities call themselves, maybe non-physical in the way that we know it, or non-human consciousnesses. And I believe that type of communication is being prepared to come into some more tangible version of reality. In other words, we're going to see maybe a more provable exchange between human beings and non-physical entities, or non-human entities, whatever you want to call that. And I think that's going to be one interesting thing coming from the whole AI story. There's going to be tons of other stuff, but the big thing is going to help us see what we're in denial of. It's going to start to shine a light and give us gifts that will actually help us practice self-love a little bit more. It's going to be something that we're going to be able to see our past, and there's a past about this 6, and that's interesting, because a lot of the history of what's been written in the past, a lot of that knowledge and wisdom of experiential knowledge that people have shared and put online, and the AI is going to be able to pull out some gems of wisdom for us in response to our questions and prompts. This is a little bit like an ancestral gift that's coming from somebody in the past that took the time to experience something, collect a set of ideas together, communicate them in some way in written form, and then we're going to have that bounced back to us. So we're going to be given ideas and gifts that have emotional weight to them, that have a valid degree of self-awareness or mirroring for us in our lives. I think these are some of the more spiritual qualities of AI that are going to bring up. Are there going to be issues with it? Yeah. Can it be tainted and can it be taught and programmed in a more negative way? Yeah, no doubt. But I have a tendency to look at things in a more spiritual context and with a slightly different perspective, and it's going to help break certain mental patterns, and it's going to help us actually let go of old programs and open our minds to a much more wider and broader perspective of any and every topic of life. Tell me what you think AI is about and any other topics you would like me to make a video on. Much love.